Hi everyone. MuseScore 4's MuseSounds work pretty well out of the box. That's what they were made to do. But as with many of these kind of products, a little tweaking can get much better playback results, even if it's not exactly what we would have in the score we would give to performers. To try this out, I'm going to use Bogorodice Devo by Sergei Rachmaninoff for SATB Choir. I found a MIDI file online, which I'll use to speed up the process. If you just want to hear the final version, feel free to skip ahead in the video. I've labeled the chapters so that you can do that. If you want to see the journey and some of the techniques I've used, let's go. Here's the initial playback from the MIDI file without any changes except to add the MuseSounds bass voice to the baritone. This is really a beautiful piece, and the tone of the vocals is great, but it's sounding rather mechanical. So I want to fix up the dynamics, balancing, the tempo, and the articulation of the choir. Let's start with some dynamics. I found this PDF score on imslp.com and included these dynamics into the score. I had to adapt them to allow MuseScore to interpret them properly. For instance, MuseScore needs explicit instructions for these swells, so for every crescendo or decrescendo we need a starting and ending dynamic. Just having a listen to the opening shows us how much of a difference dynamics can make. And this is where these MuseSounds really shine, is with swells and dynamics. I should say I've also changed the tempo just because I felt that the MIDI file had it a bit fast for my liking, so I've changed the tempo to crotchet equals 55. The next major challenge is these lines where we have multiple notes per voice. In this case it's in the alto. MuseSounds struggles to connect notes when there are chords involved, even though we add legato. And I think it's because of the legato samples that are designed to move from one note to another, and MuseSounds doesn't know which one we're busy with. To combat this, I've separated out the different parts, and that sounds much better. Some dynamics never hurt either. The challenge now is that these repeated notes tend to blend into one long note. So I've used a trick that is often used in digital mockups, where I've duplicated those notes, but with some articulation. So we still have the length of these notes, but with some articulation added. The articulation on its own sounds a bit jagged. But together there's just a hint of extra articulation. And the same here. Just those subtle changes that we want. I remember singing this in my university choir, and we sang it quite a lot slower, hence the crotchet equals 55, and also had some rubato at times. So I've added those tempo markings, pauses, and breaths in, which just help to add some musicality and humanness. I've also added my own dynamic markings that I think would help. For instance, this alto line needs a bit of detail, which I've added here. And I've also adapted some of these dynamics at the end to bring out the melody lines as they come through the different voices, as well as adding this deep bass note, which I remember our basses in the choir adding, and with some dynamics to just help it come out a little more. Finally, in the mixer, I added some panning to the voices to provide a little more space, experimented with some extra reverb into the signal chain, which I decided to leave out in the end, and added a master effect on the master channel to boost the volume a little. So let's have a listen to the final version. So while I would normally stop once I had added the dynamics and slurs and given that to the performers, I've added a few extra steps to squeeze a bit more musicality from MuseScore and MuseSounds. Bye!